Hello, my name is John Burris. Thank you for joining me today for this short video called the Fascia Wrinkle Cure. In this video, I'll be sharing with you the importance of fascia and how it helps create wrinkles and how you can remove the wrinkles by working with the fascia. And it's all a magical system and it's very easy. And it shows you that wrinkles aren't permanent and they're just temporary places on your face. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you some new ideas about new anatomy and how the body is soft plastic. It can get harder and tighter or softer and more fluid. And we'll be sharing with you that wrinkles don't have to live there forever. You know, the wrinkles in our face often tell the story of our life. Whether you're a cowboy in the range and you're beaten down by the sun every day, or you've got some kind of grief process you never finish and it shows on your face, or you're angry all the time, your life is stored in your face, and your face will create stories, wrinkles, lines, and whatnot, but those don't have to stick with you. You can get rid of them. You can be clear in your face if you know about fascia and how fascia works in the body. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you the importance of changing the fascia to remove the wrinkles. You know, many people, they go through cosmetic procedures. They put creams and lotions on their face, and they get cosmetic surgeries, and they do eye lifts and facelifts, and that's fine. But what if there were a simple solution that had a simple answer? You know, a lot of it goes back to how we blame about the face. For example, we're taught to believe, oh, it's aging. Aging causes our facial lines to sink. I don't believe that's true at all. That might have a tiny impact, but not very much. Oh, it's the sun. You're out in the sun. Well, that might have a tiny impact, but not very much. So, oh, you're old. It's just you're supposed to look old. Well, aging doesn't really affect you that much because not everybody who's old looks like they're weary down and shabby. So those are minor influences. The most important influence that I find is most of us don't know how to use our facial muscles. And when you have tight, constricted facial muscles, you pull the fascia tighter, and the fascia is wrapping around the muscles, then it hardens and solidifies and creates creases and wrinkles and crow's feet and wrinkled jaw lines, and it causes the whole shifts in the eyes and everything because your facial muscles haven't been used correctly, and it causes the fascia to tighten and harden. So there are natural changes of the body. As you get older, we lose elastin and collagen and other minerals. So there are some natural processes that happen. There's also could be things that happen that affect your skin and your face. Could be your diet. If you eat a lot of toxic products, it's going to show up on your skin. If you take a lot of drugs, and that could show up on your skin. If you don't sleep well, if you're under a lot of stress, that could show up on your face too. So those are minor influences, but I find the most influential influence on your face is most people don't know how to express emotion, so they stay stoic in your face or locked in one emotion, and that causes the fascia to harden, to dry out, and that's where the lines start happening. For example, when people squint all the time, guess what happens? They develop crow's feet. Not because of the sun, but because they're squinting. They're using their muscles to shorten and harden, and then after a while, the surrounding fascia will dry out, and you have these lines around your eyes because you created that. And this is normally what we see in a face. We say, oh, this person is old, they're wrinkled. That's normal. That's how we're supposed to look. And that can't go away. That's just how age looks on a person. I disagree. This is not normal, and it doesn't have to look this way. And those wrinkle lines can go away. So let's talk about the layers of the skin itself. There's 4 layers of the skin. The top layer is called the epidermis. Underneath that's called the dermis. Below that's called the subcutaneous fascia. And then underneath that's called the deep fascia. The epidermis is basically dead cells. It's epithelial cells that are essentially dead. But below that, the dermis, the subcutaneous fascia, and the deep fascia all contain fascia. And then we have different names for them, but they're different names for fascia. And fascia will be able to change shape based on how we address it. And here we have the same picture here. So the top layer here, that's the epidermis. And that's the dead cells. That's the epithelial cells that are dried out, and it's a protective layer. Everything after that's fascia. Here's the dermis. It's a thicker layer, but it still contains fascia and collagen and elastin. Below that is called the subcutaneous fascia. And then below that is called the deep fascia. Well, guess what happens next? Right here is the muscle, and the muscle's surrounded by fascia. So these lines here are muscle fibers, and they're surrounded by fascia tissue. And when the muscle fibers are hard and tight because you're squinting, it pulls the fascia hard and tight, and it pulls all the layers of skin hard and tight because your muscles are controlling the skin. So when the muscles shorten and shrink because you're squinting, all this surrounding tissue, the fascia in the skin, will shrink and harden and glue together as well. So what I find is the most common way people develop wrinkles is because the 43 muscles in their face aren't being used correctly. And we get stuck in an emotional pattern. Whether it be squinting or scowling or anger or fear, you can walk down the street and see an angry person. Why? Because their face is locked in a fear pattern or an angry pattern. So here's some of the anatomy here. So this is the fascia muscle complex. These blue fibers here would be the muscle fibers in your face, and they're surrounded by soft, liquid, gelatin-like fascia tissue. What happens is when you shrink your facial muscles, because you haven't learned to use your full expression of emotion, this gelatin-like fascia hardens. It turns into concrete, and that's your wrinkle. It's concrete fascia tissue because you haven't learned how to use the surrounding muscle fibers correctly. And over time, you develop wrinkles and call it old age, or it's how things are, the sun, the weather beaten. But in most cases, it's not. In most cases, you haven't learned how to use those 43 muscles on your face. And here's a picture of the facial muscles. There's 43 of them. They're supposed to contract and relax based on your emotional reality. If you have little emotional reality, then those muscles get hard and tight. It pulls the surrounding fascia hard and tight, and now you have wrinkles, crow's feet, wrinkles in your forehead, a scowl line. That's because you're stuck in an emotional pattern because you don't know how to use the muscles in your face. So let's talk about fascia itself. Remember, all the muscle tissue is surrounded by fascia. Fascia is the largest organ in the body, yet it's not really studied by Western medicine at all. It's pretty much ignored. It's considered a waste product. But when your wrinkles on your face happen, that's a large part of that is your fascia tissue. And while you can put creams and lotions and do your cosmetic surgeries and your Botox, the real answer is, how do I soften my fascia? Because that's where the muscles are stuck in place in the fascia. So fascia is basically like a bag of water. It has cells in it, elastin, collagen, and whatnot, and it's supposed to be liquid. What happens is when you stop using your facial muscles, it dries out, and it loses its elasticity, and it dries and hardens, and you lose that liquid nature of your tissues because you don't know how to move your facial muscles. Now, once again, you can do your Botoxes and your creams and lotions, and that's okay, but that's really a backwards approach. That's like trying to close the barn door after the horse has already left. If you start to move your facial muscles and start to soften your fascia tissue, that will get to the root of the problem. So the fascia, it's like an orange. When you see the white stuff in an orange, you cut up an orange, you see the white stuff. That's like the fascia in the body. And here's a picture of an orange. You see all the orange part and all the white part. The white part is the fascia in the body. It contains, it connects, it keeps everything together. And it also dries out when it's not used correctly. That's why when you open up an old orange, it's all dried out. Well, that's a wrinkle. It'd be like a wrinkle in the body. You have dried out tissue. Fascia is also like a gelatin mold. It's liquid in nature and it has cells in it and whatnot. So when it's Basically, in its natural state, it's liquid. When if you were to heat it up, it'd dry out, whatnot. So it wants to be liquid. When it dries out, it's not very healthy. Well, that's what happens in the fascia in the face. It dries out, creates wrinkles and scars and all kinds of other pockmarks. So here's the interesting part, it's a very cool part. Fascia can change shape. It can get better or it can get worse. And it's up to you how people live their life. For example, in the yoga world, you're using a lot of stretching and warming of the body, and you're lengthening the fascia tissue and it stays warm. That's why somebody who might practice yoga regularly is going to be long and lean and warm, and somebody who practices fitness and weight training is going to be shortened and hardened and stiff, because it all has to do with the fascia. So the same thing happens with your face. When you warm up the tissues, the muscles, the fascia, it stays liquid and warm. When you keep the muscles contained and hard and tight, like a scowl or a frown, or you have no emotional expression at all, then the surrounding fascia will dry out and harden and create lines in the body. So there's a concept called Thixotropy, and that will create a chemical process where you can change the fascia in the body just with your fingertips and your hands. And that's where the magic comes in. So imagine my hand is the muscles in your face, and they move. They're supposed to move. Now the fascia that surrounds the hands doesn't move. It moves with the muscles, so it can't move by itself. So if my glove here is the fascia surrounding the muscles in the face, if they're moving, the fascia is healthy. But what happens if my muscles in my face stay rigid and stiff? The fascia stays rigid and stiff, and it glues together. And it's called hydrogen bonding. And now you've got wrinkles and lines because your muscles aren't moving and the surrounding fascia isn't moving. So here's where this concept called Thixotropy comes in. Imagine you build a house in sandy soil, so the soil is really loose, and there's a giant earthquake. What happens is the sandy soil moves so quickly, it's called liquefaction, where your soil sinks and your house sinks 10 feet because the quick action creates a chemical process turning the solid sandy soil, like quicksand, into liquid, and it destabilizes your foundation, you sink. Well, you can do the same thing with your fingertips with fascia bodywork called Thixotropy. You can change the chemical process in the fascia by turning it in from a solid to a liquid, and then you stretch it like taffy and the wrinkles go away just like that. So it's a magical process. Thixotropy is the name of the process. It's also called liquefaction, by changing the fascia by stretching it with your fingertips. So once again, most of us were taught to believe that our facial lines are the wear and tear of life. It's from the sun, it's from aging, it's from gravity, it's from the alien invasion, and I don't believe that's true at all. I think those have a minor influence on us. I don't believe they're the major influence at all. I think the fact that most of us have not learned how to use our facial muscles correctly causes the fascia that surrounds them to tighten, harden, and stiffen. But once again, it doesn't have to stay that way. What I've discovered in my fascia bodywork practice, I can remove wrinkle lines and raccoon eyes and jaw drop and facial drop, and I could straighten noses, and there's all kinds of possibilities because the fascia is liquid in nature. The body's plastic. It can be shaped and reshaped. And I've discovered amazing things that can happen if you do enough of the right things. Now, it's not a technique that's commonly taught. It's a specialty. You're going to have to find a specialist who can do it. But I discovered in my fascia practice that it's certainly doable, and I'm going to show you some pictures here in a minute to show you how magical it can be. Let me first show you some pictures of people who have wrinkles. So this is the forehead wrinkle. This is not caused by the sun. This is an emotional pattern that somebody is stuck in. They're using their muscles incorrectly. They're not moving, so the surrounding fascia will dry out and harden together. This is not an age-related issue. This is an emotional-related issue. Here is another picture. Somebody's stuck in a scowl. This has nothing to do with age or genetics or wear and tear of the sun or gravity. This is an emotional pattern somebody's stuck in. You can guess what it is. It might be anger, it might be deception, mistrust, but this is an emotional pattern causing the muscles to freeze up in a certain pattern, and the surrounding fascia gets hard and tight, creating a wrinkle groove. This is the dreaded crow's feet. This is not from the sun. This is from somebody who's squinting all the time. That's an emotional pattern somebody's stuck in. Causes surrounding fascia to harden and dry in that position. This is a face drop here. It could be caused by an accident, a bacteria, a nerve condition, but it is correctable. The face is pliable. It's soft liquid plastic. It can be changed. So those are some people who had lines and wrinkles. That's normal, but we call that aging or wear and tear. No, it's not, because they're stuck in a certain emotional pattern in most cases. Yes, weather has something to do with it, but it's not really what you think it is. So the good news is fascia can change shape if you do enough of the right things. And what I've discovered in my practice, that a very soft, light fingertip touch can melt, soften, and change those wrinkles forever. Not just wrinkles, but scars, pock marks, all kinds of facial distortions can change because the fascia is essentially a liquid medium. And when you know how to work with it, it's like a sculptor sculpting a statue. You can change it and remove it forever. So let me show you some actual clients of mine and how their faces changed. Some took one session, some took 2 or 3 sessions. But you can see a dramatic change because their fascia changed through the process. These dramatic changes happen just in one session. Just using my light fingertip pressure completely transformed this person's face. Not only that, it takes away the years of stress and tension and holding that gets carried when you have a tight fascial muscle background there. So this is just one session of complete radical change. This is one session of complete transformation as well. And it shows you the tension leaving, the stress, all the worry being melted away that's held in the fascia muscle junction as the wrinkles and the tension patterns melt away just with light fingertip touch. And this was a 4-session sequence. Somebody who was severely wrinkled, who was in the older age bracket. And after 4 sessions, all the stress and tension and fear and worry were removed, and a completely different person. Radical changes just using light fascia bodywork. Not only facial muscles, but this is a client who had her collarbones softened. You see in the beginning, they were sticking out greatly. And after light fascia bodywork, the collarbones were balanced out again and the skin returned to normal. So not just facial wrinkles, but also the wrinkling of the neck and the collarbone area. So you see that facial change is certainly possible. Remember that fascia is a liquid bag of water, like a gelatin mold. And you can be molded and shaped. So in most people's cases, those wrinkles are coming from facial muscles that don't know how to work properly, from motion stuck in their face and all the stress of life they carry in their face. And when you take that away with your fingers, people feel free and open, and they're not hiding anymore behind an emotional mask, because that's what it is. It's a mask of who we are. So this is an amazing experience, just letting you know the possibilities of you don't have to live with wrinkles. You don't have to spend tons of money on expensive creams and lotions and procedures. That facial change is certainly possible, but you have to acknowledge the fascia in this process. And once again, the medical community for thousands of years had pretty much ignored fascia. They call it waste product, and it's a waste material, and they throw it away and they discard it. And it has very little importance according to the medical community. So in the leading edge community, which is what I've formed, it's called New Anatomy. Fascia is one of the most important parts of the body. And follow me on YouTube here for many amazing videos on fascia and its relevance in the body. So we're at the forefront of amazing changes in our culture, and part of that change is reinventing anatomy. Most of us were taught old anatomy that's hundreds and thousands of years old, and it's keeping us stuck in this scientific paradigm. New anatomy is about living people. Living anatomy is about fascia tissue. So if you'd like to learn more about me, please visit me at my website, johnburris.com. Please subscribe to my channel here for more leading edge videos to come. So this is the revolution of new anatomy. Be part of the leading edge community, and you'll be seeing more and more as we invent and reinvent the body. So thank you for joining me today for this short video about the Fascia Wrinkle Cure. Have a great day and express your facial muscles. You'll feel the wrinkles melting away.